30, maybe 30 kids between the ages of 13 and 16 or 17, all playing a 4-minute piece, 4 or 5-minute piece, all wonderful musicians, and it's a very exciting thing to do. So, but this piece actually grew out of an assignment in my daughter's English assignment at her high school.
I see.
Because her teacher gave them a choice for at least this year, they allowed them to do creative writing in English class, which is not always the case in public schools. And she had choices. One of the choices was that she could write a story about an experience that she had had, and then she could invite one of her parents to also write a short piece about the same event. So actually Sophie wrote a story about her performance that day in Carnegie Hall, and then I wrote this little piece to hand in with her. So when she handed in her piece to the teacher got to read both my version and Sophie's of the same event. So it was a great assignment, very exciting for me to be able to write something at the same time that my daughter was doing it. The teacher was very responsive and delighted to have
How old
more
is
things
Sophie now?
She's 16.
She's 16, I see. What is she planning to become?
She doesn't know, but she knows it's going to be music in some way or other.
Really? So she might end up at Berkeley?
I don't know if she'll come to Berkeley. I'm not sure it's the right place for her, but she wants to go to a place where she can study liberal arts and music. She wants to do a double degree in
Berkeley, the right place?
It could be, perhaps. So we've been looking.
She'll take my Western philosophy course.
Yes, she could. So we've been looking at a lot of places, and I'm sure she'll do well. I have great confidence in her succeeding. But that's where that piece comes from.
It's beautiful, and what I liked, as you just put it, it's real, it's existential. Finally, before we move on to yours, so that you can have the joy of reading your own stories, because I've been stealing the show from you and reading them. But of course, they are your pieces. Out of Breath, this one is called. The inner workings have slowed drastically. Mom cannot move from one moment to the next without aid. Helpers materialize at times out of sequence. Her bodily functions are random and distant, her food insipid, her senses dulled by apathy and drugs. It may be early morning, not night, because the cold blue haze of the television has disappeared or merged into the raw light. The sheets are irritating, rough, and antiseptic. Large hands roll her from side to side to change the bedding. They carry her to the bathroom, settling her on the hard, white seat, catching her if she sways too far forward. Might as well let herself go into the diaper. She stares at the ceiling in an unfocused funk. A gurney whispers and squeaks in the hallway. The muffled rumbling of the highway seeps through the fogged, double-glazed windows. Thin light gasps for air in the void above her mouth. Her breath flees as her chest contracts. The cramped inward curve of her spine aches toward a slow reverse spasm. The thin sheets, light as air, shroud her body. A movement in the corridor or in the inner recesses of her memory calls her back momentarily to the heart's tired throbbing. The eyes of the soul cloud as the light shrinks inward, choking on its final passage. No one stands by. No one stands by for the final breath. Heart-wrenching. This is an example of what I try to call in my writing courses, writing's power. It's this kind of writing that I try to encourage my students to do. It must have taken me a long time to write this short.
Well,
I can tell that it has been worked and reworked, probably cut from 10 pages or more.
it's part of a larger piece, and you're right. It has, and it's a totally different subject. This being about my mother's death, actually. So, unfortunately, my mother is among those who ended up with Alzheimer's and was in a lockdown Alzheimer's facility at the end of her life, and not in close contact with the world around her. So I was trying to capture the moment that I found out about my mother's passing from a phone call, because I wasn't, because it happened at a time when no one was there.
Alone, she died alone then?
Well, in her room, in the hospital. They came and found that she had passed away during the night. So it was my imagination of those last moments is what I was trying to convey.
You captured it very well.
And you're right that this is the kind of, I tend to be obsessive about certain pieces. The ones that you read before were written quickly and reviewed several times, but then I was ready for someone to read them. Whereas some pieces like this one, I work many times before I show them to anyone, so that I can listen to all the words and read them out aloud to myself until I like the way they go together.
Are you very satisfied with this particular program? Did it do
I don't know if I'm ever completely satisfied, but I'm happy that it does convey some of the emotion, I think, that was in that event for me.
It's that final stanza that bears to be read again as a piece of literature that I thought was a gem, a jewel. No one stands by for the final breath.
Yeah, because after all that time, neither my sister nor myself neither of us was there at the moment. Because Alzheimer's is an odd disease. It shuts down parts of the brain, and one never knows whether it will shut down a useful or a useless part of the brain. So it might be something very minor, or it might suddenly stop the major functioning of the body. And that's how people pass, is suddenly something no longer functions.
Do you think, as you imagine this last moment, that